Welcome to Gentleman Villain Podcast with William Regal. Mr. Regal, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you. Absolutely lovely.
Of course,
Can't be
last week
any
we
happier. Well, I could be, but probably get me locked in jail if I was doing anything that make me any happier. You know, taking over the world and such. I'm like
you
that
know,
thing, Pinky in the Brain. You know that cartoon.
yeah,
If I had like big hands, like the big hands, like I see some of these people, I'd rule the world. It's my drawback being like that. That's like even being small. It's me having these knitting
right.
hands instead of, because I'd just like be this horrible thing that would conquer everywhere.
Well, it's a good
Yes,
thing
because
then.
I've got
I
a
think.
wicked mind.
Well, we're going to use that wicked mind this week. Of course, last week we talked about Takeover One, and we
Yes.
learned more than I ever thought I would ever learn about the real world of professional wrestling. And this week, we're going to go ahead and hit that Twitter again, and we're going to call these episodes Asked and Answered with Mr. Regal.
Oh,
And we're going, yeah,
oh,
it's branding, a little different thing,
oh. And
And
also, let's we're going to be honest with our audience. To save you having to listen to me go, because I go into great depth of detail of these um, subjects we go into, and to save you having to be this becoming a chore, if you're kind enough to listen, these will just be shorter every other week. And I
yeah,
think there's plenty of questions, because every question I've always going to have and it'll lead to one story to another, and so we'll go from. And if you don't like them, we'll take them. We'll start doing something else.
yeah,
But I
something
think
good.
it saves you having to listen to intense things every week. Let's go for a bit more, just because people don't get to ask the questions they want, do they? Really, I you can't answer. I don't go on Twitter much, and I used to try and answer at first. When I first got it, I used to try and answer a lot of people's questions, but the more you have to do, the less time you have, and now I just can't be bothered, because it's just like too
There's a
much,
lot.
and
There's a
there's
lot.
a
Yeah,
lot. Yeah.
there's a lot. And of course, if you want to ask a question, if we put it out there, you can follow us over at Gentleman Regal on Twitter. And if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, make sure to give us a review, make sure to subscribe, and we're going to hit this Asked and Answered. We have a question from
Yes.
Kevin Sullivan. Now, there's
Now
three.
is it the Kevin
Apparently,
Sullivans?
there's three because
Oh,
I
there's
know
three.
Kevin
I know
Sullivan,
I
the
know two
wrestler,
of them.
and the
I know
Kevin
two
Sullivan
of
that
them.
works with you.
Yes.
And then there's a Kevin Sullivan who writes wrestling books. He's written He's the best-selling author of more than a dozen wrestling books. I'm gonna have to figure out which ones those are
Well,
because I probably read them.
I feel really bad now,
Yeah, I
because
know, I
I
know.
think I would know who that was, but I don't.
I'm
Or
sorry,
maybe I
Kevin.
do, and maybe I've met him, and it's just been, "Hello, Kevin,"
Yeah.
and that's it. I don't know. We might never have met each other,
Well,
but I do.
I was intrigued by this question, because I thought it kinda hit you in a good spot here. He asks, "What's more rewarding, competing in a high-profile angle or seeing one of your former students competing in a high-profile angle?"
Seeing, and I don't like to call, they're not students, but people who I like and have spent time with helping. I much prefer to see them, because I don't watch my stuff very rarely, unless it comes up on one of the few things that I follow on Twitter that put GIFs. Is that the right way of saying it?
Yeah,
GIFs?
yeah, yeah.
Right, GIFs. I've got to get down with the modern language.
There we go.
There we go. Um, uh, because I do look at those, because they give me ideas of matches to watch, or things that I haven't thought about for a while, especially old British stuff, or from different countries and stuff turns up. Or sometimes I just see really good stuff. Oh, right. And things I forgot about. And so I see bits of mine, and it's good, because they usually only put the decent bits, and not the other stuff that I'd drive myself mad with if I was watching it, thinking, why did I do that? Why shouldn't I do that? So I'm not somebody who sits and watches my own stuff. Um, so I much prefer it if I am watching something that somebody that I've had some involvement with is doing well. I enjoy to see them doing. But well, because I've had nothing but a charm life out of this, so I've done my bit. I don't need to relive that. It's been wonderful to me, the wrestling, and I'm happy when I can, say that somebody that's been kind enough to listen to me is doing well. So that's the answer to that.
This is from Steve at King of COTT on Twitter, and with a follow up from me. He asked, in World of Sport,
Yes.
when the old women on the front row would wallop the wrestlers with the handbags,
Ooh,
was that a setup slash part of the show?
no.
My follow up is, what the hell is he talking about? Educate
Right.
us on what he's
Okay.
talking about.
So, and it was the same in America. Wrestling was very much as you call it, Americans, blue collar, and in England, a working class um, sport. And it was definitely never, ever, ever a setup. A lot of old ladies used to come to the wrestling. Anybody that came to the wrestling, but they were working class people, and it was. I've heard these wonderful theories that w- wrestling did a huge amount of help to the working classes as far as allowing them to release their frustrations, which makes sense. If you're living um, in a working class lifestyle, and your husband or you as an old lady are working in a factory and a monotonous job, and you get to go, that's what wrestlers do. You get to live your lives through us. Any form of entertainment, you get to watch something. Well, we're a morality play, and you get to watch it. Well, wrestling's live and in your face. And so a lot of old ladies used to the villains were very good at riling people up, used to come off they'd be sat front row, and they used to, imagine they've got you know, different day and age. You got a husband who's working all the time, and maybe you don't get on, and he comes home, and life's hard, and you haven't got a lot of money coming in, and you perhaps he's not the nicest to you, or perhaps it's, your kids are a bit of a pain, and you get to go to wrestling nearly every city in Britain, or every town had regular wrestling, right? Every 2 weeks or every month. And you get to go, and you've got a bad guy and a good guy, and you're rooting for for the good guy, and the bad guy is there, and you can take your frustrations out on him, and they would get up and they would hit you with handbags. As you call them purses, right? But
Yes.
they're handbags. Now, I know this as fact because it was still going on when I was wrestling in my teenage years, right? Um, some of those old ladies were wicked. They used to put some of them put bricks in their handbags. Seriously,
Wow.
some of them. There was a thing, Pond's. It was like a cream that a lot of wasn't an expensive cream, but it was hand cream, and they were pretty hard, like stone jars with this cream, and that was a well-known thing for the old ladies to put Pond's hand cream in their handbags and go up and wallop you. Now, I used to see that quite a lot with people like Jim Breaks and Sid Cooper, and people that were good villains and good at winding people up, right? Really good at getting emotion out of people. One of the things I was involved in once, and I've seen it happen in matches that I've been in, right? It's never happened to me. Well, it's happened to me, but it wasn't in Britain, and it wasn't a very pleasant thing. I've had some nastier things, but old ladies with handbags. Another thing that old ladies used to do, and fans, they were wicked. So I was in a tag match in Norwich, England. Now, the fans used to seem to just come to want to fight and cause trouble. And how Paige's dad, how I first met him, he was one of, had to be, before he got into the wrestling, or as he was just getting into the wrestling, he was one of the security guards. They used to have security guards at the wrestling, in a day and age when you really didn't have security guards, but at Norwich, because there was so much trouble going on. And it was either ladies fighting, or there was a lot of farmers went there and they wanted to fight the wrestlers. They just come to take their aggression out. It was whatever their form was, to come to take their aggression out. So the first time I ever wrestled there, I was 18 in the winter of 86. I'm in a tag match. And on the opposite team, a fella that I knew very well, Steve Peacock, I actually used to actually live at his house when I first left home. And when I was 16, he had a house in Blackpool and I lived in a room in his house. He's on the opposite team, but he's on the other side. We're both on the apron. We're all holding the tag rope. And I can see it coming. There's an old lady coming. And I'm trying to let him know, without, in a day and age where we couldn't sort of,
Right.
it was a different day and age. But I'm sort of like going, like, behind you, look behind you, without trying to give it away that I'm letting him know, because I'm on the apron and I'm telling the people in the ring, tell Peacock, tell Peacock, tell Peacock. As I see an old lady come up with, old ladies used to wear hats, and they put, to keep it on their head, put these big hat pins into, because they all had hair. And she had a hat pin, and I watched her stick it right through his thigh from behind, and he didn't see it coming, right? In the same building, there's a very famous British lady wrestler called Klondike Kate. One of the farmers went up as she was by the ropes, ran up to her and stuck there was a thing, an injection they used to give to cattle, because there was a disease that cattle got called foot and mouth disease. And she's on the ropes, and it's too late for anybody. This fella just run up from behind and stuck a foot and mouth disease injection, big injection, right into her.
What?
And injected her with it. Right? We're talking on a different level of what this job used to be. There used to be forever. So the old ladies, when you see them, that's all real, and they were all just taking the frustrations out. And it used to be that because these wrestling shows have been going on for years, like territories in America, that it was the same people if you talk to any old American wrestlers, a lot of the same people came every 2 weeks, and their seats were their seats.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'd have these old ladies, and then sometimes, and I was around with that, they weren't there anymore. But then I noticed that the person who sat with them was sat in their seat. They might be their grandkid or their daughter, and they sort of passed seats onto each other. They went that was their life, was going to wrestling, and wrestling was one of the things that you could go and let your frustrations out. So when you saw old ladies hitting people with handbags, they were hitting the villains with handbags. And when you saw people, you've heard about it in America, and I lived through it, people hitting the ring on you, it was because they were so into what we were doing, they were trying to attack the wrestlers in some form or another, and you used to have to chin them, or knock them out or whatever. It was and that was just the way it was. I remember, this is a different day and age. Up until the early 90s, there was none of this. We told people this was all on the level. And yes, people will say, oh, yeah, we didn't. If they walked out the building, they may say, yeah, right, it's wrestling's whatever it is. But when they were in there, no different than you going to a movie and getting excited about it, or believing it's a movie, but they were fully invested emotionally in what we were doing. And so it was open season for them to it. There was no such thing as guardrails around the ring in England.
Right.
You go back and watch any of those shows, the fans were there and the ring was there, and that was
right
it.
There.
So
Right.
that they were there, you were there for the getting whacked or whatever, there's not, you just in that. Norwich was the few place where they used to have to, there was Norwich and there was another place in, I'm trying to think of the place back bit down south. And there was a lot of Romani gypsies, and that they used to come just to want to fight the wrestlers. And they used to have security there because they all wanted it. They were all fighting lads that, it's part of their culture, and they all wanted to fight. I'm trying to think of the name of that place. Robbie Brookside, if he was here, he'd tell you that. But there's all kinds of stories like that. That was just normal stuff. Finlay was, when he was on his game, right, when he was on TV in Britain in the 80s, this is a fella, when there was a war going on between Britain and the IRA, from Belfast, wearing shamrocks, right? And there's a war going on.
That's a big
I
political
can
statement.
I can I cannot tell you how much times, and you'll see if you ever see any of his things, whether he was hitting people that were trying to hit the ring on him, or his then ex-wife Paula, who was his manageress, her hitting people left, right, and centre. Paula has told me many times that she'd go to the local supermarket where they lived in Manchester, and there was wrestling fans there, and they'd be spitting at her. In the street, people spitting out, and he used to have to go out and be watching everywhere because people bought into it so much. But on top of not only just being a wrestler, but the media fed the what was going on. Nothing to do with normal people in Britain. It's a problem with the British government and Ireland. It's got nothing to do with the normal people, but the normal people are fed whatever the newspapers are feeding them. So there was this terrible stuff going on, and the people, you're going out on TV and beating, like Finlay's beating all the British wrestlers. He was having to fight a lot. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, well, in the United States in the 50s, there's a legend of Hatpin Mary who would stick
Okay.
wrestlers like you described, and
Yeah.
glad that's not going on anymore. Here's a
Yeah.
question. This is a much different subject. Um, this is from Dan at WRTY 12 on Twitter. Why are you allowed to use William instead of Stephen? Um, is William a WWE name? Do you have the rights to use it? Is it kind of a thing that you have agreement about, or something you feel comfortable talking about?
It's something I'm very comfortable talking about. I own the name.
Oh wow.
Um, um, I never asked for it. But on my contract, always from WWE, on the back page, it said names owned by me, and it was Lord Stephen Regal, William Regal, and a couple of others that I used when I was in England. I don't know why they were on there, and I never asked for them, and they were on there,
Hmm.
and there was never any. It's my name. The only thing, and if Mr. McMahon would have asked me not to use it, I wouldn't have used it out of admiration for him and for what he's done for me. And he never did. It's on my contract and was on that I own the names. The only thing that WWE had was a copyright in America and in Europe if I was to wrestle. They could stop me wrestling if they wanted to as William Regal. Well, I don't wrestle anymore. That was the only thing. So when I left, or when I was let go from WWE, I just got the copyrights in case I ever needed them, mainly to stop anybody else taking them so I could use them to market myself. But if Mr. McMahon never brought that up, there was never a problem. It was on my contract anyway, but he could have, if he'd have asked me, Darren, I'd rather you didn't use, I know you own the name, but I'd rather you didn't use it, because if we've given you 21 years of publicity, incredible publicity, using the name William Regal, I would have said certainly, boss, because he's done so much for me, saved my life, got me incredible. It's done a lot for me. So that wasn't the case. I don't mind, that's, so I have no problem anybody knowing that. There's no, I know silly stories go around. There's no anything. There's no ulterior motive. There's no agenda. There's no. It was just on my contract, and he never asked me not to. If he called me today and said don't do it, I would stop using it. But he never has.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you do use it, because William Regal is what a lot of people know you by, and of course, I'd be remiss not mentioning my good friend Mike Dawkins, who has made a pretty good run of becoming the gimmick attorney and trademarking a lot of names. Maybe not this one though. This question comes from Paul at Deftones22. He's asked, when scouting from the indies, you would often go in person to a lot of indie shows to see for yourself if a talent possibly has it. You talked about this a little bit last week with Sami Zayn about you don't know why you see what you see, but this question goes on to ask, what are some of the things you look for? And did you ever go intending to watch one talent, but ended up discovering someone else instead?
Don't ever remember going to watch one particular talent. Not off the top of my head. No. What I used to look for, well, there was many things I looked for. One, first of all, how good they were when I actually see them live. And will they fit into the WWE system in whatever was needed? And that was a lot of different things. I was always preparing for whatever could come next, because a lot of my time with WWE as well as NXT, it was for the next project that could possibly come up, which was for the network. There was so much of the stuff was to put specials on the network, which is how the Cruiserweight Classic came along, which was how the Mae Young came along, which was how NXT, the UK tournament came along, how NXT UK came along, how there was going to be a lot of other different things. COVID changed a lot of different stuff going on at the time. So I wanted to see people up close. There was a lot of people that used to send me their stuff for me to watch. And I used to go through everybody's stuff, which was a lot. And it took a lot of, on top of everything I was doing, this was stuff I could have just gone, oh yeah, I've watched it and not watched it or half watched it, but I didn't. I watched everything and I sent people, and there's a lot of people who will tell you this. I gave them ideas of different things to work on. And that was going on for years with a lot of people. And there was just never an opportunity for them for whatever. But I always looked at it, what if there is? Because that's how quickly the Cruiserweight Classic came together. Were we going to do this? We had an idea, but we need as many people from as many different parts of the world as possible. Well, there was a lot I could call on straight away, but then between myself and Canyon and Kristen Altman, and I believe it was Paul at the time, that Paul Fair was helping, and then just me asking other people, because I know so many people, and all people, I can ask people who know people, right? We got to try and get as many countries as possible and as many ladies as possible. And yes, I'm watching everything I can watch, but Can't find a fella from Chile. Well, I found a fella from Chile, right? And just it. I used to watch everything, but if there was people in America, or I went to England at times, and then I went to Japan, um, to go and watch them live and to see, because what you see on the screen sometimes isn't what you see. What was certainly in my case, I want to see how it how people react to it live, and see exactly how good it is live, and to see if there's anything I can help them with, um, as far as what they may need to work on. A lot of people used to call. I never go up to anybody. Right. I didn't think that I still don't. If you want to come to me, sometimes I will go up to people and say, look, doing this, if I'm working for a certain company, when I was working for WWE before it was my job, do this. It's because I know that the boss likes things a certain way. And if I'm going up, it's me trying to help you so you don't do it the wrong way. So he pays more, he's got more chance of you paying attention to you. Does that make sense? So,
Absolutely.
right. But once it became my job, it's like I used to go wherever I went, Evolve, PWG, whatever I went to, um, I would go and I would watch. I would also, one of the tricks of the way I did things, I never sat down to watch stuff. I always stood up at eye level with the ring. The reason I did that is because that is what the cameras at the cameras next to the ring are going to see. If you're sat down looking up, you seeing at a different angle. You can see maybe things aren't hitting as well as they should do, or missing a little bit, or not. There's not certain things. Well, I know that'll pick up on a camera. And so if people had come up to me at PWG and say, have you got any advice for me? Well, maybe you might want to work on that. And I think they were expecting me to tell them all kinds of wrestling stuff. Sometimes they would, if they asked me specific things, but if they say, have you got anything for me? Well, if I'd seen the match, maybe you want to work on that. And they may not have wondered, why is he saying that? Yeah, well, you do that there, and that camera, that illusion is going to be broken. And I want to give you every chance you can, if you get the opportunity, to make the right impression. And if your strikes are missing by a mile, I don't want to do that. So maybe you need to work on that. Oh, and it could be a lot of other things, like just knowing how to have a presence about it, or look, keeping your eye on your opponent, or certain things that I know with the company, or what guidelines I was given to try to get people what the company wanted. And sometimes it was just things, oh, I saw you do that, and I know a better way to do that. Not trying to know that I know better, but it's a lot safer. And actually, look, if you do it like this, it saves you the risk of doing that. Oh, right. Yeah, nobody's ever told us that, because all we've done is watch it and copied it. Right. Well, I just happened to be around a long time. So whether I could do it or not, or did it in my actual wrestling style, I've been and seen around most things, and heard people who came up with these ideas or these things, and I knew how to do them. I'd been shown how to do them, like I said, never did it myself, but I knew how to do it, and I could save you from injuring yourself doing that. There's so many different things. But that was why I used to, and I wanted to see how you actually, what it was like with the atmosphere of a crowd. Other people, it was just seeing tape and uh, okay, sending you, well, maybe try this and try that and try that. If you want to know, and sometimes adding the psychology of the company I was working for, of what they wanted. So that you've got more of a chance of being able to get an opportunity there than if you come in and you're not doing that. So that was it, really. Also, like with the UK, going and seeing people that actually. That's why I pretty much the only reason I ever looked at the wrestling writing world, and I don't want to get into any kind of anything but buddy getting upset about this, but I like to know who's working where. And that's a guide for me. As far as reviews of anybody's stuff, I don't care. Because it's an opinion. And then I'd look up, okay, they're working there. Let me find what I can find about them. Let me see what I see and let me go and see them. Because again, I'm seeing something different, or I'm watching it from a set of eyes that's used to TV wrestling and knows how to do certain things or what the company wants. And so there was many things that I went to look for, but just keeping an eye on everybody. And you can only do so much of that watching film. You have to go and actually see them and then look at them. There's another thing, got a PWG. Not only watching what's going on, but quickly scanning the room and seeing how people are really reacting. Are they just chanting because they're chanting because everybody else is chanting, or they're chanting because they're really emotionally invested? And trying to pick, okay, these people are a bit different to that, and they're going to get the audience at NXT or wherever on side quicker than this person. And there's only so many spaces, so let's get the people who we need and the ladies who we need at the right time, and finding spots for them all. So there was a lot went into that, and that sort of worked out for me, being able to get the right people at the right time, because I put so much homework into knowing what was going on, and going to see as much of it as possible.
Well, there's no disputing you did that, for sure. This is kind of a fun question from Daniel Ellis. Is there an American food that is a guilty pleasure for you that you never would have touched in Blackpool?
Saying in Blackpool, it's like I never left Blackpool. I've traveled all over the world, and I'm not some fish and chip merchant. Don't laugh. I think I'm nothing but fish and chips and kebabs.
I guess the question is,
Right.
do you have an American food that's a guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. When I first came to America, it was pancakes. Because in England, we don't have, they do now because things have changed in the last 29 years. But we only have one day a year in England where you eat pancakes, and it's called Pancake Day, believe it or not. It's a something left over from a religious holiday called Shrove Tuesday. And that was the only day of the year where I got pancakes, and they weren't the kind of pancakes that you have. They are more like what you call crepes, and they were very thin, and you squeezed either lemon or orange juice on them and lots of sugar. And there was no such thing as syrup or anything in it. But I used to see American programs a lot, right? Different wherever I went in the world. There's always American shows, and I'd see people eating these big stacks of pancakes with syrup on. And when I landed in America, I stayed at this hotel by the airport called the Ramada Inn, and next door there was a Waffle House. Now they don't think they had pancakes, but they had waffles, which was the closest thing to it, with loads of syrup, and so it was just that was the one thing. I think the next thing, because I'm a big I'm going to offend all the non-meat eaters here, but I'm a huge steak person. Americans do incredible steak. Again, in England now it's changed, but when I was in England, steaks were okay. They were good, but they're not compared to when you come to America. So
yeah, we do do steaks. Yeah.
You do know how to do steaks, yeah.
One thing. Hey, this is a great question from Charlie Thrower, big podcast fan. He says Walter / Gunther has yet to have a bad match during his time under the WWE umbrella. Mr. Regal, in your opinion, what makes him so special?
because he knows what he is and he sticks to what he does best, and he doesn't expose anything that he doesn't know what, he knows exactly what to do that's got him to where he got to. And the he had a long time to figure it out. I remember having him on a tryout, and he hadn't figured himself out at the time. Once he figured out Walter, excuse me. Once he figured out Walter and now Gunther, he he is the perfect heavyweight lion. A person who was a huge influence in my wrestling style and in helping me was my favorite wrestler to wrestle. And I've mentioned his name on here before, called Terry Rudge. Terry Rudge taught me in my early 20s a lot of things about the way I wrestled and the way he thought he had ideas about how wrestling should be. And he said, because in Britain that's another thing that's been a great thing for me. I'm not of a mentality of size. I grew up in England, and the wrestling I saw, there was lightweights, lightweight division, middleweight division, heavy middleweight division, light heavyweight division, heavyweight division. All the divisions had a British champion, a European champion, and a world champion. And so it was normal for me on any card, or any time you watch a British TV, the wrestling world, what's considered world of sport now, to see variations that people think there's a British style. There's certain things that overlap in each weight class, but there is different styles and a different sort of flavor to it. And Terry taught me that all wrestlers should wrestle like a big cat. Lightweights should be like a cheetah. Middleweights should be like a puma. Heavy middleweights and light heavyweights should be like a tiger or a panther. And heavyweights should wrestle like either a lion or a tiger or a cross between the two. And if you think of the way a wrestler moves and the way it attacks and the way if you're a good wrestler, it makes perfect sense, because they're an animal, an agile animal that's ferocious and moves and strikes, but they move at different speeds and different, and a lot of wrestling movement is actually what cats do. I mean, I still do Hindu push-ups, which are like when you see a cat stretching, and stretch through, which is
Right.
what a cat will do all day long. And that's part of my training. It's part of wrestlers training for 2,000 years. Well, I grew up wanting to be a junior heavyweight, but I didn't have a lot of skill. What I did, and I grew too big, and I ended up being a heavyweight, but I could move around, a bit, depending on my health and different things. I could either be a good lion, or I could be a cross between a tiger and a lion, or just a tiger on certain days when I was really going at it, and with whatever opponent. Well, Gunther, as you say, has perfected being a perfect lion. He knows exactly how to be a lion,
Wow.
a heavyweight lion, and that's how he doesn't go out of it. You think about the way a lion is, it'll just stalk, just prowl up and down, it'll swat if it has to. When it has to sprint, it sprints and it kills. And if you look at him like that, you go, he's figured out, he's perfect, but how to be the perfect lion. And that's what a really good heavyweight should be.
That's a great answer, and we can all see it now. Jason Fields on Twitter. Of course, you can follow us over at Gentleman Regal on Twitter. He said he wants to know what recollections you have of your skits with Bobby Eaton while you're the Blue Bloods.
Fond memories, wonderful, wonderful memories of my friend Bobby. Um, so this is how my connection with Triple H started. We were put together as a tag team to be the original Blue Bloods, and we were Jody Hamilton, who was the master assassin, was running the power plant in Atlanta. I'd been already for the year that Triple H had been with WCW. I'd been there a year before him. We were constantly training together. And any days off we had, we were training together. And I was teaching him. I wanted to teach him as much of that old British stuff as possible. Not that he ever really needed it or used it that much, but I didn't think that style would. I was passing it on to somebody because he was a young fella that wanted to. I just knew he was a student and of the game, as they say nowadays, and wanted to pass that on to him. But we just trained, and other people trained with, Terry Taylor, I know, trained with him a lot. But Joe, when we found out, and we traveled together a bit and whatever else, that's where our friendship comes from. And then there was a decision to put us together as a tag team, which there's a few matches you can see on YouTube. We just Jody Hamilton was an expert tag wrestler, so he taught us. We worked with him a lot, and we had basically ready to unleash this team, and they were going to put Sherry Martel with us, and there was big plans for us. Well, at the same time, his contract was up, and this story's been told, but he had the offer. There was some talk of me going as well, but I had already had a deal with WCW, and WCW was paying for my family's green cards. But I wouldn't have left anyway because I'd signed a deal with them. But I said to him, you need to go to the WWF. You need to go, because what he did lack was reps. I'd had God knows how many.
Right.
That couldn't even imagine, because I wrestled so much in my younger days in Europe, and then in WCW at first there was such a lot of that. But this is a time in WCW in late '94 when they weren't doing many shows. They decided it wasn't viable to do that financially. So I told him to, he made his mind up, I think, anyway, but he asked me my opinion. I said, what you need is reps now. You need to go. So I went on for Christmas in '94. I came back. January, first TV was at Center Stage. I am at Center Stage. Ric Flair, I know mates say differently, but I remember this clearly. He was the person in charge of creative then, and he came to me and said, "Where's Levesque?" And I said, "You better ask Eric," because I knew he'd gone because his deal had run out, and I knew he wasn't coming back.
Right.
He left on good terms with Eric and that. And I know people have made this, but I know very few people knew that he'd left. I was one of. And Rick said, "What we're going to do?" And I looked across the Center Stage, which is not a big place, but there's a ring, and I saw Bobby, and I said, it just came to me in a flash. I said, "Put me with Bobby in a tag team, because who better to be in a tag team with than Bobby Eaton?" And they weren't doing anything with him. So he went, "Right, okay, and what are you going to do?" And I don't know why, but it just came straight off the top of my head. I think, if I remember rightly, I'd seen a little bit. I'd seen it before, but it was on while I was in England over Christmas. It was on the TV one day, which was My Fair Lady. You can Google that. I'm not going to get into what it is, but basically take a a lady who was a working class lady and make her into a high society lady. So because of my character, Lord Stephen, I said, and I can do this My Fair Lady thing with Bobby and Rick. Everybody in WCW at that time trusted me with just because of my, talking ability and my facials and my comedy chops and whatever else I had. They said, okay, go and do it. So talked to Bobby. He was happy. We were filming down in Disney uh, because sometimes we'd film at Universal doing the worldwide shows. We'd do, I think it was 12 or 30, sometimes 13 shows in 4 days down there. When I was TV champion, I used to be on 13 out of 13 shows in 4 days. I remember that
Jesus.
because there was a lot of, it didn't bother me the work. It was just a lot of having to get matches out of people. Some were great, obviously with Arn and with Terry Taylor and Brad Armstrong and that. And then, oh dear me, I used to just sit there thinking, how am I going to get another draw out of some of these people? There's some like people that just stood
What
there in big
constitutes,
clotheslines.
I know you're
Oh,
not gonna say any names, but what constitutes a bad match? Like what
well,
would happen in a match that
there
would make
wasn't
you
a
think
bad.
about it?
I wouldn't because I could. I I don't think I
You'd
had
work
all this
around it.
experience and work around them. So, but it was if I had one of the fellas from the 80s who had been through territories, they all adapted everywhere they went. So they didn't matter what style they did. We had no problems at all. We just wrestled each other and we just reacted to each other. So it always worked, always with any of the people from 80s wrestling. And the last of the people of that kind of generation were the Austins and Pillmans because they come in right at the end, and Austin had pretty much quickly just picked it up. He was exceptionally good and picked it up really. So, but there was this new generation of if you're a bodybuilder, you can do a clothesline, you can be a wrestler kind of
Sure.
thing. So, um, but anyway, we were down in Disney, and so I just said, right, can we have a camera crew, please? And there was I forget who the production people at the time, and they trusted me as well, and they had a couple of ideas. They went and scouted Epcot out, and basically everything we needed was in Epcot because they've got a British World or whatever, and so they did that, and which was great. And then we just went and filmed all these little. We just made them up sort of on the spot. Like we went in and sort of discussed them between ourselves, myself and the production people. Well, what about this? And we filmed them. And I don't think we had to do anything more than 2 takes, if that. And I think most of them were 1 take. And then, I think with a couple of them we did again. Oh, let's throw a line in. Some of the lines that Bobby was throwing in, because they brought it up, I didn't really know what they were. I remember him drinking wine at one thing, and he mentioned about Boone's Farm or Ripple or something, and
Right.
I'd never heard of that, like so. But I was just went along with it, knowing that was that because they laughed when he said it because they asked him, and it came together so quickly, and then there was so much fun, and then next thing they're showing them. I mean, it was all that we did the whole of those things in 1 day, with the exception of the very final. I think there was 3 or 4 of those, and we filmed them all in 1 day in Epcot, except for the very final shot is us in the CNN Center, and there was a lovely gentleman there, and I forget again. I'm sorry, I forgot his name. That used to do the clean shoes there, and we went and sat on his the shoe shine chair thing, and he was cleaning the shoes, and we did 1 shot of us reading the newspaper, and because the CNN was there where WCW offices was, and there was a little studio downstairs in the CNN Center. It was right outside of there, and that was the only shot that, apart from that, was done at Epcot. And we sat there, and I'm reading the paper, and I just looked at Bobby, and Bobby's already got the thing and the hair and the clothes. And I said, I wonder what the poor people are doing today. And I think that was, I could have this mixed up, but I think that was that was definitely the final shot we did. I think that's the final thing of those vignettes. We did do another set of vignettes I don't know how we got away with. And I think we got away with them because they were a DVD extra on the Bash at the Beach. It was 95 and was at Huntington Beach. And they said, because this act was working and people liked it, and the people in charge liked the act, can you go out and film some stuff in Hollywood? And we're going to add it as a, it was a video extra at the time, the Blue Bloods in Hollywood. And if you can ever get hold of that, I don't know how we got away with that, because they just said to me, you do it. So we went off with a film camera, and there was all kinds going on at the time. One of them was going to O.J. Simpson's house.
Oh no.
After that. And that, because I've got I come from an old, my bit of a warped sense of, especially being a wrestling villain and throwing stuff in. I thought I can get away with all kinds on these stuff. So we went to his house after this terrible, terrible thing had gone on. And we're getting echo. I mean, people, they were filming me talking, and I'm going, this is the tragic, scene of the O.J. Simpson horrific affair. And I'm just talking. And behind me, Bobby Eaton, it's like one of those things where I'm oblivious. I'm just talking to the camera. Behind me, he looks behind himself. There's like a big hedge, huge big hedge next to the house. And as we're doing this, we did have to do a couple of takes of this because there were people driving past in cars heckling us. Leave the poor people alone, right? Leave them alone, because it was all, there was still all tape around it and everything, right?
Oh my gosh.
Right. So I've gone, I'm, it's horrific. And I'm saying this, well, Bobby, being Bobby, because he's obviously playing a character and oblivious to what's going on, he's walking behind me, and he goes, looks in the hedge, and we'd already put it there, and he pulls out this great big dagger. and he just goes, so I can't see him, right? He's behind me, and I'm going, this is terrible and awful things. And he's looking this dagger, and he just puts it back in the edge, and he comes back to me, and I say, can you see anything here that's why all this, why all these people are staring at this house? And he went, no. And we just walked off to the side of the camera. The other thing was, do you want to say these things now? People got away with it, but it was just me at 20, whatever year old, trying to being funny, right? River Phoenix had just died, and we ended up at the Viper Room outside.
Of course, right. Of course.
Right.
Right.
And I'm stood there, and it's and broad daylight, and everybody, and then, just filming. There's always filming going on in LA somewhere, so they don't know what we're doing. And we're all dressed up, and I'm saying, this is the spot where poor River Phoenix died, and and I, it's just me trying to be a villain, and being a villain and not caring what I'm saying. And I said, because he was American, and when I look back, oh dear me, and I went, and I said, anyway, he's died, and I haven't been able to sleep worrying about it ever since. And I just spit on the floor, and we just walked off camera again. And if you watch it, but it's just me just doing stuff like that, and we got away with all. And Hugh Grant had just got caught with an old brass somewhere.
So you went to the park? You went to the?
Oh yeah. Well, I didn't know what Grant's tomb was. So one of them, somebody in the production thing said, it was American history. I was taught British history, right? I'm only 26 or what, 25, 26 when I'm doing this. I got no idea about Grant's tomb, right? So they said, oh, that'll be funny, because Hugh Grant's just got caught on this corner of this street where he got caught, getting, a quick one round the wall of death on the end of this thing, right? So I've gone, right, let's go this Grant Simpson. So I'm Bobby's saying throughout the thing, I said, is there anything you want to see in this, this horrendous place, this full of plastic people? I want to see Grant's tomb. So we go to this spot where Hugh Grant's got caught, and I'm going, is this what you, what, you know, this, he went, Grand Slam. I said, no, this is not Grand. I said, this is not that. I hadn't got a clue what it was anyway, but I said, no, this is Grand Slam. This is where that dirty, filthy philanderer Hugh Grant got caught, you know, like, this is it. This is a spot. And he's going, no, it's the wrong way. Something like that. And I walked off. But that is out there somewhere. That showed up on YouTube a few years ago. So somebody's got that somewhere. That if you, but it might get me cancelled as well with some of the stuff I did on it. So,
communications have already taken
let
place.
me just tell you,
we're going to find that clip. We're going to find it.
If it were to get cancelled, I would know anyway, because I'm not on social media, so I would know. Yeah. So a wonderful time. The whole time with Bobby, we had great chemistry together. It was fantastic tag teams. There was a strange decision. I'd gone. I'm not a ego person, but there were 4 teams at the time. There was Harlem Heat, the Nasty Boys, Bunkhouse Buck, and Dick Slater, who I absolutely loved. I loved their characters. I just thought they were really fun, and we had a lot of fun wrestling them with them being there doing their characters, us doing our characters, and we were the only team out of the 4 teams that were wrestling each other all the time that never got the tag team championships, which I would have thought, and I'm not the world's best booker, but the best people to have them on would have been us and everybody chasing up. You know, the foreign villains would have been the smart, and the, you know, we all knew what we're doing, but we were the ones that were sort of, you know, the ones to beat, in my opinion, and build up. And we were the only ones that didn't get them, which is a bit of a strange thing. And the TV stuff we didn't really match the live event stuff, as is the case with a lot of my career. I worked a rule on TV, and I was known for that. You know, no problems whatsoever for anybody I worked for, except for with the years that we've talked. You know, there's a little bit of time in my life when I wasn't at my best. But what you want, yeah, no problem. And so if it wasn't I didn't care about. There's main events on after me. There's other people that. What you need? How long do you need? Yes, I'll go and do it. Arn Anderson used to tell me that all the time. Why are you so easy to deal with? He said that to me, and Dave Taylor said to me and Bobby, you're the only ones that never go, yeah, but we need to be this, so I need to, yeah, what you want? Yeah, okay, thanks. We're in and out, getting our orders in 30 seconds. Because I know how hard it is for them to have to put all this together. So I just want to be a pro. I grew up around pros that taught me to be a pro. So a lot of my TV stuff wasn't me. It was me just doing what I was told, or not wanting to sometimes take the person I was on with and drag them. Sometimes I did, and a lot more in WCW, not in WWE so much, because like the wrestling job had changed a lot then. In the beginning of the 2000s, things started to change a bit, just the way the job was. I sort of used to get told by Fit Finlay and Chris used to say, like, why are you working down to people? And that wasn't with any of the top people. That was just certain people. I allowed myself to just sit in, you know, because they had their regular thing, because they got to work 16 days a month and you got to preserve your body. But if I was on with somebody I could go with who was on my mentality, I'm going. You know what I mean? I'm going. But otherwise, you know, I'm doing what I've got to do. So, because I didn't want to take this person, because you can upset a few people when you work that style that I like to work. If they like to work like that and like to wrestle like that, it's great. Yeah, you know, and I've had many, many great opponents that I could do that with. But a lot of people, it takes them out of their comfort zone and they have to sweat a lot because you're going to work hard. And that was my preferred style. But a lot of people, so my TV stuff a lot of times didn't match my live event stuff, because on live events I was going to give you a show, unless I was told to just have a short match, but I was going to give you your money's worth. Sometimes on TV I was a bit too nice, I think, and just quite happy to just do whatever, because I know how stressful it is putting it. So I want to be the last person to cause you any problems. Let me go and do whatever you needed. And me and Bobby were like that as a team. I think if we'd have probably gone in and gone, hang on a minute, wouldn't it make more sense? But neither of us were like that. We were just, what you need, okay, let's go and do it. So that was a long answer to that.
Oh, it was a great answer. And man, we're gonna find those tapes, and we definitely want to see them.
Oh,
Of course, this has been another great episode of Gentleman Villain, another great episode of Asked and Answered, where you ask questions, and we just have one more short question to end the show. But make sure you can to follow Mr. Regal over there at Real King Regal on Twitter. Follow the show at Gentleman Regal, and of course, you can follow me at Matt Coon Music. This is our last question, and it's a tough one. So let's see if you're up
tough
for it.
one.
Okay. So here's the question. Okay. This is from Marsh on at Ref Marsh on Twitter. He asks, hypothetically, if there were two groups of people, perhaps 5 in each group, who had a very heated conflict, where do you think they should settle such a dispute?
Are you talking wrestling wise?
Yeah. I'm just trying to get you to say blood and guts, basically. That's what I'm.
Ah, blood and guts. Yes. All right. I'm going to say if it was just, again, times have changed. One time it was either, I come from a time when it was, I've had like different time in the 80s when or things not go right and fallouts with people and people or me seeing it as a teenager with other fellows. Right, get what you going out to the ring now, and they've had there's been some miscommunication. When the bell goes, get what you can.
Right.
Right. Or you go out the back door and have a fight. Well, now people get into silly things on Twitter, don't they? And have arguments on Twitter. And they've just started talking about it and going out and sorting it out. But in the wrestling world, then it's I'm not gonna do the thing because I have to get my big butch voice on for that, but blood and guts. Yeah, it's about as good as I can give you today. And then it's gonna, it's blood and guts.
How about? I guess
and you want me to say the other one, and I'm
good.
I'm not gonna say that, and that's out of sheer respect for the company, for WWE, because I know that's their thing, and people have asked me to say that. Just people I meet nowadays, and it's their thing, and
Sure.
They haven't asked me they haven't said anything that I can't say, but it's their thing, and so I'm leaving it for them. Now I work for AEW. I do AEW stuff.
Well, respectful and dignified.
Probably cutting my purse string. I mean, like stopping my bank account because I could get on Cameo and just say the other word and do nothing else but do that. I think because there's that many people like me saying that what I used to say in NXT, but I wouldn't unless they gave me and I'm not going to ask, and unless they said it was okay to do it, I wouldn't. I just out of they were good to me, and I'm not going to take liberties with stuff like a lot of people would. I respect the fact that that's their thing, so I'm not going to do that.
Well, a lot of people respect and admire you, dignified and respectful to the end. And this has been another great episode of Gentleman Villain, Asked and Answered. Of course, hit us up on Twitter. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform. Give us a review. And we want to thank you all for listening to another episode of Gentleman Villain with William Regal.
Thank you.